Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine, right here in the city of Memphis, in the county, Sheriff State, Tennessee. Today date is Sunday morning, November the 5th, 2023. The time 9:40 a.m. First, I'm gonna say thank you to my family, my support for you. Continue to support, continue to keep myself employed in Memphis, tri-state area. Continue to further my education, more work college online. Continue to pursue my social degree. Then be administrative contract tomorrow. Depending time, take a break from going to school in the very near future. I'm gonna go back to more work college online and pursue my social degree, study being administrative contract tomorrow. Now, what I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna start my Facebook Live. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine, right here in the city of Memphis, in the county, Sheriff State, Tennessee. Today's date is Sunday morning, November the 5th, 2023. The time is 9:41 a.m. First, I'm gonna say thank you to my family, my support for me, for you continue to support, continue to keep myself employed in Memphis, tri-state area, continue to further my education, moral college online, continue to pursue my social degree, study being administrative contract tomorrow. Spare time to take a break and go to school in the very near future. I'm gonna go back to more work college online, continue to pursue my social degree, study being administrative contract tomorrow. Now, what you see in front of you, anti-gang, anti-Gnostic, anti-hazing. Also, and versus Iracese, translated mean against heresies. Saint Irenaeus, the Bishop of Lyons, together with Saint Ignatius, the Bishop of Antioch, they wrote a 5-volume book refuting Gnosticism, proving that Gnosticism was a heresy. Also, Saint Athanasius, the Bishop of Alexandria, in his 39th Festal Letter, Easter Letter, banned all non-Christian writing. Them Gnostic theologians were doing all this writing. Saint Athanasius, the Bishop of Alexandria, together with all the other bishops in the Catholic Church, that went around and collected all that Gnostic theologian writing and tried to destroy it all. A personal person took some copies of that Gnostic theologian writing, wrapped it in some papyrus paper, and put it in a jar and buried it in Nag-Hammadi, Egypt. In 1945, the little farm boy was outside playing, and he found the jar containing the Gnostic theologian writing. The little farm boy gave what he had found to his father, who was a farmer. And eventually, the scholars at the college and university around the world, they found out about it. And ever since then, the sororities and the fraternities at the college and university have been using and misusing the Nag-Hammadi library to victimize men, women, and children, to be self-destructive and destructive, trying to destroy wildlife, nature, and the environment, trying to destroy the North and South Pole. Also, Saint Epiphanes of Salome, the Bishop of Cyprus, wrote a 3-volume book titled Panorama in Greek, Panorama in Latin, translated meaning bread basket. The scholars at the college and university around the world have also said that Saint Epiphanes of Salome, Bishop of Cyprus, 3-volume book is also adverse heresies, against heresies. esoteric and exoteric. Esoteric and exoteric. Esoteric. And you break it down to syllables. S-O-Ter-ic. Esoteric. And break it down to syllables. S-O-Ter-ic. Exoteric. And break it down to syllables. X-O-Ter-ic. Exoteric. And break it down to syllables. X-O-Ter-ic. Rejecting knowledge. Western esotericism. Western mystery tradition. Hermetism. Gnosticism. Neoplatonism. Rosicrucianism. Freemasonry. Age of Enlightenment. Spiritualism. Kabbalah. Exoteric. Occult. It's the same thing. Arcane. In macrocosm, microcosm. Rejecting knowledge. Rejecting knowledge. Western esotericism. Esotericism. Western mystery tradition. Hermetism. Gnosticism. Neoplatonism. Rosicrucianism. Freemasonry. Age of Enlightenment. Spiritualism. Kabbalah. Occult. Exoteric. Same thing. Arcane. Macrocosm. Microcosm. Rejecting knowledge. Occult. Esoteric. Exoteric. Spiritualism. Theosophy. Anthroposophy. Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn. New Age. And you have all this occult sciences, occult qualities, occulture. Rejecting knowledge. Occult. Esoteric and exoteric. Spiritualism. Theosophy. Anthroposophy. Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn. New Age. And you have all this occult sciences, occult qualities, occulture. the Almighty Vice Lord, Four Corner Hustler, the Almighty Black Prince Stone, the Almighty Black Disciple, Poppin', the Almighty Mickey Cole, Kraken, the Almighty Bluefin, Black Disciple, the Lord Stone, Disciple, 7-Eleven, G Killer, Gangster Disciple Killer, GD Killer, Glazed Donut Killer. When you say Vice Lord, the history of the city of Chicago, Vice Lords, and the Almighty Vice Lord Nation, and you go into the history of the city of Chicago, and the dirty sheets and the wailing sheep, and what they done and what they had did, and the imperial chaplains, The Dirty Sheets and the Wailing Sheep, they did that. The Imperial Chaplains. The Dirty Sheets and the Wailing Sheep, they also, the 14th Street Clovers. That's what they had done. And out of all that, the vice lords, conservative vice lords, Elvin Pepperlo Perry, young man, growing up in the city of Chicago. And so, like I said, Conservative Vice Lord Incorporated is being revitalized. Bootstrap Incorporated is being revitalized, meaning coming back. Slowly but surely. Conservative Vice Lord Incorporated is being revitalized. Bootstrap Incorporated is being revitalized. They both are coming back. Slowly but surely. There's a lot of people like myself affiliated, associated with Almighty Vice Lord Nation. Most important thing, always remember what you teach and how you teach. That's what's important. What's important, what you teach and how you teach. Now, the time went back yesterday, last night, early Sunday morning, time went back, so we got an hour. So, still made my video today. And, while I'm still making, let me look over here right quick. See, one of the things we have to look at when it comes to current events, the war in Ukraine is still being fought. And so let me look over here at the newspaper, because one of the things you have to notice is this: the United States government has been giving a lot of military aid to the people in Ukraine to fight against Russia. And as you know, it is coming wintertime, and it's a lot of boats trying to come up here in the United States of America. It's a lot of boats. Some kind of spending bill being considered, and in that spending bill, support for Ukraine, military support for Ukraine, as well as now support for Israel. And when you look at the news so far, you can see that it really is not a big change in the war in Ukraine, meaning that the Ukraine is fighting against Russia, Russia fighting against Ukraine. As well, and let me make this clear while we talk about wars. There are a lot of things happening all around the world. The United Nations is trying to work toward peace all over the world, trying to bring peace for all human beings all over the world, on this planet, on this earth. The United Nations is working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year, trying to work toward world peace for every human being on this planet, on this earth. And I mean, there are places, it's all I can say is the United Nations is trying their very best to try to bring peace in all these different locations, all over the earth, all over the planet. And so when it comes to the war in Ukraine and Russia fighting against Ukraine, Ukraine fighting against Russia, the war itself, you don't really just see this big change in the war, meaning the Ukraine has not gained a big advantage in the war. It's like both sides are fighting, and it still haven't brought about, the Ukraine trying to run Russia out of Ukraine, and the war just haven't been no major events being reported. That's what it means. When you don't see anything really just that says there's a big change in the war, like it just completely got turned all the way around. And now it's like Ukraine is just winning the war to the point where they done completely ran Russia out of the Ukraine. That so-called, the Donetsk region and eastern Ukraine and the Crimea. It really hasn't been any major changes. I mean, sometimes you'll hear them say something like some kind of area. It might have been some kind of skirmish, gunfight in this area. And it may have went this way or that way. It may have been Ukraine may have got some casualties on the Russian side to the point where the Russians kind of retreated. But on the overall war itself, it hasn't been any, being reported. It hasn't been any major changes in the war being reported. So I want to look at a newspaper, a Russian newspaper. So I go to this Russian news agency, TASS. See, a lot of times things get reported. You know how ABC News, CBS News, NBC News, and then you got Fox News, and you got CNN News. You just got news, period. Newspapers, and as well as, television, radio. A lot of times they don't, it's like, like they always say, you don't tell everything, you don't. So I can look over here at the Russian news agency, and they'll talk about how much American equipment being destroyed by the Russians. So like I say, it's not that I'm not saying, it's just I'm scrolling through the tab and I'm seeing American made military equipment being destroyed by the Russians. That's what I mean by it don't get reported. Because they are using this stuff against the Russian military. This stuff has been delivered and gets used, but like a lot of missiles and things like that, HIMARS missiles, they get shot down by the Russians. And all the other equipment, it get destroyed. That's the reason why when the news media be reporting, and the American government, they say they want to give aid to the Ukrainian, military aid. They want to give military aid to the Ukrainians. This is the reason why I look over here and see what's being done. And you see the Russians are fighting. And that's the reason why it's not a real big change in the war. Because the equipment that the United States is giving them is being destroyed. The Ukrainians are using those HIMARS missiles. They get shot down. They get shot down. And then you got all these Ukrainian militaries being killed in the war in all these different locations. See, the Ukrainians, as you know, they not just focusing on one area. It's all these different locations that they trying to fight a war against the Russians. The Russians are defending all these different locations, and then the Ukrainians are trying to fight a war, and they trying to fight in all these different locations. They not winning. True enough, it might be a firefight. This unit against this unit. And sometimes it may be. They fired a tank missile, might have fired a tank might have been bagging up the foot soldiers, and they might have fired a rocket or a tank rocket might have hit over there. But they're just in that location. But then they're on the other side. The foot soldiers might have retreated, but the Russians got tanks too, and anti-tank guns. Then they fire back. So it's a back and forth, tit for tat, in all these different locations. But it's not making no big change in the war. There's a lot of men, there's a lot of Ukrainians being killed. There's a lot of Ukrainians being killed in this war. It's a lot of and then not just being killed, but getting, casualties, injured. The weapons we use today, you can knock out a whole unit. When these tanks fire, man, you can kill over 100-some people. 50 to 100 men can get killed with one tank. Fire, a tank fire something, a tank shell can hit, and man, you probably been and killed 50 or 100 men. One shell. Because the weapons we use today are very powerful. Very powerful. That's on both sides. You can't take Russia, you just can't try to make Russians like their weapons are like World War II. Like they behind World War II type weapons. It don't make no difference. They're still kill. You can have some World War II shells in a tank, but I guarantee you this, when they fire them shells, they still kill. They still kill. And like I said, so basically it still ain't no change. And then when you watch the news, you don't see no major change. You don't hear anything. All you hear is there's a war being fought in Ukraine. But what you don't be hearing is that the Ukrainians have gained an advantage in the war. They ain't gained no advantage. They doing things, in different locations, but it's not making no major change in the war. They don't have no military advantage against Russia. And now it's finna be wintertime like it was last winter. See, it's finna be wintertime again. It's gonna get cold. Well, we know that today, and I wanted to make sure that I wave the flag, the flag waving of the Palestinian flag and the Israeli flag. See, the United Nations has already made it clear the two-state solution. Now let me refer over here to Wikipedia. They give a list of United Nations resolutions concerning Palestine. United Nations General Assembly resolutions. 1947, November 29, Resolution 181, recommending partition of the mandatory Palestine into Arab and Jewish states, and international status for the city of Jerusalem. 1948, November 19, Resolution 212, assistance to Palestine refugees. December 11, Resolution 194, establishes conciliation commission, protection of and free access to Jerusalem and other holy places. Resolves that the refugees wishing to return to their homes and live at peace with their neighbors should be permitted to do so at the earliest practicable date, and that compensation should be paid for the property of those choosing not to return and for loss of or damage to property which, under principles of international law or in equity, should be made good by the governments or authorities responsible. 1949, December 8, Resolution 302, assistance to Palestine refugees. December 9, Resolution 303, international regime for Jerusalem. December 10, Resolution 356, Jerusalem. 1950, December 2nd, Resolution 393, assistance to Palestine refugees. December 14, Resolution 394, calls for Arab-Israeli peace negotiations and a solution for Palestinian refugees. December 14, Resolution 468, reduces financing for an international regime in Jerusalem. 1952, January 26, Resolution 512, report of the United Nations Conciliation Commission for Palestine. January 26, Resolution 513, assistance to Palestinian refugees. November the 6th, Resolution 614, assistance to Palestinian refugees. November the 25th, Resolution 66, report of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. 1953, November 27th, Resolution 720, assistance to Palestinian refugees. November 27th, Resolution 766, accounts of United Nations of the UNRWA. And then 1954, December 4, Resolution 818, assistance to Palestinian refugees. December 4, Resolution 879, accounts of the UNRWA. 1955, December 3rd, Resolution 916, assistance to Palestinian refugees. December 3rd, Resolution 964, accounts of the UNRWA. 1956, December 21st, Resolution 1081, accounts of UNRWA. 1957, February 27th, Resolution 1091, Palestinian refugees. February 28th, Resolution 1018, Palestinian refugees. December 12th, Resolution 1191, Palestinian refugees. 1958, December 12th, Resolution 1315, Palestinian refugees. 1959, December 9, Resolution 1456, UNRWA. 1960, December 18, Resolution 1545, accounts of the UNRWA. 1961, April 21st, Resolution 1604, Palestinian refugees. October 30th, Resolution 1636, accounts of UNRWA. December 20, Resolution 1725, Palestinian refugees. 1962, December 11, Resolution 1789, accounts of UNRWA. December 20, Resolution 1856, Palestinian refugees. 1963, June 27, United Nations Special Assembly, Resolution 1874. June 27, United Nations Special Assembly, Resolution 1875. November the 6th, Resolution 1890, accounts of UNRWA. Excuse. December 3rd, Resolution 1912, Palestinian refugees. 1965, February 10, Resolution 2002, Palestinian refugees. December 13, Resolution 2047, accounts of UNRWA. December 13, Resolution 2048, accounts of United Nations RWA. And December 15, Resolution 2052, the UNRWA report. 1966, October 26, Resolution 2139, accounts of UNRWA. November the 17th, Resolution 2154, Palestinian refugees. 1967, July 4, Resolution 2252, humanitarian assistance in the 1967 war. July 4, Resolution 2253, condemns Israel's measure to change the status of Jerusalem as invalid. July 14, Resolution 2254, deplores Israel's failure to abide by United Nations General Assembly Resolution 2253. July 21st, Resolution 2256, the situation in the Middle East. September 18, Resolution 2257, the situation in the Middle East. November the 16th, Resolution 2254, accounts of UNRWA. WA. December the 19th, Resolution 2341, Palestinian refugees. 1968, November 1st, Resolution 2280, accounts of UNRWA. December 19th, Resolution 2443, establishes the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the Palestinian people. December 19th, Resolution 2452, UNRWA report. 1969, December 5th, Resolution 2522, accounts of UNRWA. December 10, Resolution 2535, UNRWA report reaffirms the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people and requests the Security Council to take effective measures to force implementation of previous United Nations resolution. December 11, Resolution 2546 condemns Israeli violation of human rights and fundamental freedoms in the occupied territories. 1970, November 4, Resolution 2628 urges the speedy implementation of United Nations Security Council Resolution 2422 and recognize that respect for the rights of the Palestinians is an indisputable element in the establishment of a just and lasting peace in the Middle East. December 4, Resolution 2653 accounts of the UNRWA. December 5th, Resolution 2727 calls on Israel to implement the recommendations of the United Nations Special Committee investigating Israeli practices in the occupied territories. December 7th, Resolution 2656 establishment of a working group for the financing of United Nations Resolution UNRWA. December 8th, Resolution 2672 UNRWA report. December 15th, Resolution 2728 report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practice affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 16th, Resolution 2729 report of the working group on the financing of the UNRWA. 1971, November 8th, Resolution 2756 accounts of UNRWA. December 6th, Resolution 2791 working group for the finance of UNRWA. December 6th, Resolution 2792 UNRWA report calls for the implementation of United Nations General Assembly Resolution 194, stresses the inalienable rights of the people of Palestine and calls on Israel to stop resettling the inhabitants of Palestinian refugee camps. December 13, Resolution 2799, the situation in the Middle East. December 20, Resolution 2851, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory, condemns Israeli practices in the occupied territory. 1972, November 9, Resolution 2912, accounts of UNRWA. December 8, Resolution 2949, the situation in the Middle East. December 13, Resolution 2963, UNRWA report. December 13, Resolution 2964, working group on the financing of UNRWA. December 15, Resolution 3005, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. 1973, October 17, Resolution 3053, account of UNRWA. Excuse me. December 7, Resolution 3089, UNRWA report. December 7, Resolution 3090, working group on the finance of UNRWA. December 7, Resolution 3092, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 17, Resolution 3175, permanent sovereignty over natural resource in the occupied Arab territory. 1974. October 14, Resolution 3210 invites the PLO to participate in General Assembly deliberation on the question of Palestine. November 12, Resolution 3227, accounts of UNRWA. November 22nd, Resolution 3236, recognize the right of the Palestinian people to regain its rights, including the right to self-determination and the right of return. November 22nd, Resolution 3237, observer status for the PLO. November 29, Resolution 3240, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practice affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. November 29, Resolution 3246, affirm the legitimacy of armed resistance by oppressed peoples in pursuit of the rights to self-determination and condemns governments which do not support that right. December 16, Resolution 3330, Working Group on the Finance of UNRWA. December 17, Resolution 3331, UNRWA report. December 17, Resolution 3336, permanent sovereignty over natural resource in the occupied Arab territory. 1975. October 30, Resolution 3370, accounts of UNRWA. November 10, Resolution 3375, invitation to the Palestine Liberation Organization to participate in the efforts for peace in the Middle East. November 10, Resolution 3376, founding of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People. December 5th, Resolution 3414, calls for economic sanctions and an arms embargo on Israel until it withdraws from all territories occupied in 1967 and grants the Palestinians their inalienable national rights. December 8, Resolution 3419, UNRWA report. December 15, Resolution 3516, permanent sovereignty over natural resource in the occupied Arab territory. December 15, Resolution 3525, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practice affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. 1976. November 23rd, Resolution 3115, UNRWA report. November 24th, Resolution 3120, expressing deep concern that no just solution to the problem of Palestine has been achieved, refers to the problem as the core of the Middle East conflict, and reaffirms the inalienable rights of the Palestinians, including the right of return and the right to national independence. November 29, Resolution 3122, accounts of UNRWA. December 9, Resolution 3162, calls for an international Middle East peace conference under the auspices of the United Nations and co-chaired by the United States and Soviet Union. December 16, Resolution 31106, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practice affecting the human rights of the occupied territory. December 21st, Resolution 31186, permanent sovereignty over natural resource in the occupied Arab territory. 1977. November 25th, Resolution 3220, reaffirmed previous call for a full Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territory and an international peace conference with PLO participation. December 2nd, Resolution 3240, reaffirmed the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including the right to national sovereignty and the right of return. December 13, Resolution 3290, UNRWA report. December 13, Resolution 3291, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory calls on Israel to respect the Geneva Conventions. December 15, Resolution 32111, health needs of Palestinian refugee children. December 19, Resolution 32161, permanent sovereignty over natural resources in the occupied Arab territory. December 19, Resolution 32171, living conditions of the Palestinian people. December 21, Resolution 32212, implications of extending to certain former staff members coverage by the United Nations Joint Staff Pension Fund for service with UNRWA. 1978, December 7, Resolution 3328, CEIR PP report. December 7, Resolution 3329, reaffirmed previous call for a full Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territory in an international peace conference with PLO participation. December 15, Resolution 3381, health needs of Palestinian refugee children. December 18, Resolution 33110, living conditions of the Palestinian people. December 18, Resolution 33112, UNRWA, the UNRWA report. December 18, Resolution 33113, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 20, Resolution 33147, assistance to the Palestinian people. 1979. November 16, Resolution 3429, expressing concern over the deportation of the Bassam, Sakai, Mara, Annapolis by Israel. November 23rd, Resolution 3452, UNRWA report. November 29, December 12, Resolution 3465, CEIR PP report. December 6, Resolution 3470, reaffirms previous call for a full Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territory and an international peace conference with PLO participation. December 11, Resolution 3477, calling for an establishment of a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East. December 12, Resolution 3490, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practice affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 14, Resolution 34113, living conditions of the Palestinian people. December 14, Resolution 34133, assistance to the Palestinian people. December 14, Resolution 34136, permanent sovereignty over natural resources in the occupied Arab territory. 1980. November 3rd, Resolution 3513, UNRWA report. December 5th, Resolution 3575, living conditions of the Palestinian people. December 5, Resolution 351110, permanent sovereignty over natural resources in the occupied Arab territory. December 5th, Resolution 35111, assistance to the Palestinian people. December 11th, Resolution 35122, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practice affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 15, Resolution 35169, CEIR PP report. December 16, Resolution 35207, reaffirmed previous call for a full Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territory and the establishment of a Palestinian state. 1981. October 20, Resolution 3615, demanding that Israel desist any archaeological excavations in East Jerusalem, in general with emphasis on the Temple Mount. December 4, Resolution 3670, assistance to the Palestinian people. December 4, Resolution 3673, living conditions of the Palestinian people. December 10, Resolution 120 CEIR PP report. December 16, Resolution 36146 UNRWA report. December 16, Resolution 36147 report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territories. December 16, Resolution 36150 demands Israel to cease planning of a canal between the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean. December 17, Resolution 36173 permanent sovereignty over natural resources in the occupied Arab territory. December 17, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 36226 A and B reaffirmed previous call for a full Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territory and the establishment of a Palestinian state. 1982, February 5th, 9th Emergency Special Session. ES91, the situation in the occupied Arab territory. November 16, Resolution 3718 condemns Israel's refusal to implement Security Council Resolution 487 and demands Israel to withdraw its threats to attack nuclear facilities of neighboring nations. December 10, Resolution 3786 CEIR PP report. December 10, Resolution 3788 report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 16, Resolution 37120 UNRWA report. December 16, Resolution 37122 demands Israel not to build a canal between the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean. December 16, Resolution 37123 condemnation of Israel's alleged responsibility for the Sabra and Shatila massacre by Khalid Party in Beirut, Lebanon. Resolves that the massacre was an act of genocide, condemns act of plundering Palestinian cultural heritage, condemns the occupation of the West Bank, Gaza, and the Golan Heights, and condemns the annexation of Jerusalem. December 17, Resolution 37134, assistance to the Palestinian people. December 17, Resolution 37135, permanent sovereignty over natural resources in the occupied Palestine and other Arab territory. December 20, Resolution 37222, living conditions of the Palestinian people in the occupied Palestinian territory. 1983, December 13, Resolution 3858, CEIR PP report. December 15, Resolution 3879, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 15, Resolution 3883, UNRWA report. December 15, Resolution 3885, demands Israel not to build a canal between the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean. December 19, Resolution 38144, permanent sovereignty over natural resources in the occupied Palestinian and other Arab territories. December 19, Resolution 38145, assistance to the Palestinian people. December 19, Resolution 38166, living conditions of the Palestinian people in the occupied Palestinian territory. December 19, Resolution 38180 calls all nations to suspend all or sever all diplomatic, economic, and technological ties with Israel. Condemnation of Israel on various topics, including the occupation of the West Bank, Gaza, and the Golan Heights, war in Lebanon, and the annexation of Jerusalem. 1984, December 11, Resolution 3949, CEIR PP report. December 14, Resolution 3995, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practice affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 14, Resolution 3999, UNRWA report. December 14, Resolution 39101, demands Israel not to build a canal between the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean. December 17, Resolution 39169, living conditions of the Palestinian people in the occupied Palestinian territory. December 18, Resolution 39223. What's it? 223. Economic development projects in the occupied Palestinian territory. December 18, Resolution 39224. Assistance to the Palestinian people. 1985. December 12, Resolution 4096. CEIR PP report. December 16, Resolution 40161. Report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practice affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 16, Resolution 40165. UNRWA report. December 16, Resolution 40167 decides to monitor Israel's decision to construct a canal between the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean. December 17, Resolution 40169, economic development projects in the occupied Palestinian territory. December 17, Resolution 40170, assistance to the Palestinian people. December 17, Resolution 40201, living conditions of the Palestinian people in the occupied Palestinian territory. 1986. December 2nd, Resolution 4143 CEIR PP report. December 3rd, Resolution 4163 report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practice affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 3rd, Resolution 4169 UNRWA report. December 8th, Resolution 41181, assistance to the Palestinian people. 1987. December 2nd, Resolution 4266 CEIR PP report. December 2nd, Resolutions 4269 UNRWA report. December 8th, Resolution 42160 report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practice affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 11th, Resolution 42166, assistance to the Palestinian people. December 11th, Resolution 42190, living conditions of the Palestinian people in the occupied Palestinian territory. 1988, April 20, Resolution 43233, expressing shock over killing of Palestinian civilians in Nahalal. November 3rd, Resolution 4321, the uprising, intifada of the Palestinian people. December 6th, Resolution 4357, UNRWA report. December 6th, Resolution 4358, report of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practice affecting the human rights of the population of the occupied territory. December 7th, Resolution 4356, calling for the establishment of a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East. December 15th, Resolution 43175, CEIR PP report. December 15th, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 43176, International Peace Conference, Principles for Peace. December 15th, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 43177, acknowledges the proclamation of the State of Palestine on 15 November 1988. December 20, Resolution 43178, assistance to the Palestinian people. 2004, 6 May, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 58292, affirmed that the status of the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967. 2012, November 29, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 6719, made Palestine a non-member observer state. December 22nd, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 66225, permanent sovereignty of the Palestinian people in the occupied Palestinian territory. 2017, 21 December, Resolution ES 1019, criticizing U.S. policy on Jerusalem. 2018, 13 June, Resolution ES 1020, criticizing the Israeli response to the 2018 Gaza border protests. October 16, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 735 appoints Palestine as presiding chair for the 2019 session for the Group of 77. 2023, 27 October, Resolution ES 1021, criticizing Hamas actions in the 2023 Israeli-Hamas war. Now, it's a little too long. Now, these are what I just read on Wikipedia was the United Nations General Assembly resolutions. Now, below that, you have the United Nations Security Council resolution. It's too long. I just say from 1 all the way down to 187. 187. But the point is this. When you keep hearing that the United Nations is doing all this, and that the United Nations General Assembly, it made it perfectly clear that nobody gonna say anything to anybody. That the United Nations General Assembly, that's all the nations that are members of the United Nations. Because you know the Security Council is really the nuclear powers, which is a form within the United Nations. But when you say the United Nations General Assembly, we know that means that all the members of the United Nations have a vote. And they voted in 1947 on November 29, Resolution 181, recommending partition of the mandatory Palestine into Arab and Jewish states and international status for the city of Jerusalem, making it perfectly clear that from that point on, that it's a two-state, Palestine and Israel. Now, all this arguing and all that, but the United Nations General Assembly, every member nation of the United Nations, they made it perfectly clear from that point on. All the history about whose ancestors and all that, they took all that into consideration. About all this Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and all this about religion. All that came up. All that was discussed. All that. Nothing was left out. So in 1947, November 29, You have a Palestinian state and you have a Jewish state, Israeli state. On the Arab side, predominantly Muslim. On the Israeli side, predominantly Jewish faith. And they took consideration about Jerusalem. From that point on, the United Nations. Now let me go down here to the Security Council, because they said some things, basically said the same thing. Now, when it comes to the United Nations Security Council, you have Resolution 42, which is number 1. The Palestine question on March the 5th, 1948 requests recommendations for the Palestine Commission. And then number 2, Resolution 43. The Palestine question, April 1st, 1948, recognized increasing violence and disorder in Palestine and requests that representatives of the Jewish Agency for Palestine and the Arab High Committee arrange with the Security Council a truce between the Arab and Jewish communities of Palestine, calls upon Arab and Jewish armed groups in Palestine to cease acts of violence immediately. Resolution 44. This is number 3 now. I'm just reading some of the stuff at the top. See, this was in the early, like 1947. They called for something to be done. But then the United Nations Security Council. All right, number 3. Resolution 44, the Palestine question, April 1st, 1948, requests convocation of special session of the General Assembly. All right, number 4 says Resolution 46, the Palestine question, April 17, 1948, as the United Kingdom is the mandatory power. It is responsible for the maintenance of peace and order in Palestine. The resolution also calls upon all persons and organizations in Palestine to stop importing armed bands and fighting personnel, whatever their origin, weapons and war materials, refrain pending the future government of Palestine from any political activity which might prejudice the rights, claims, or positions of either community. Refrain from any action which will endanger the safety of the holy places in Palestine. Number 5, Resolution 48, April 23rd, 1948, calls on all concerned parties to comply with United Nations Security Council Resolution 46 and establish a truce commission for Palestine to assist the Security Council in implementing the truce. Approved 8-0. Abstentions from Colombia, the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, and the United Soviet Socialist Republic, which is Russia today. Resolution number 49, number 6. May 22nd, 1948, issues a ceasefire order to come into effect at noon, May 24th, 1948. New York City local time orders the Truce Commission for Palestine previously set up to report on compliance, adopted by 8-0 abstention from Ukraine, the Soviet Union, and Syria. And then you had resolution number 50, which is number 7, May 29, 1948, calls for a 4-week ceasefire covering Palestine, Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Transjordan, and Yemen, urges all to protect the holy places and Jerusalem. Offers the United Nations mediator as many military observers as necessary. Further violations, and the Council will consider action under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter. Adopted in parts, no voting on the resolution as a whole. And so it goes all the way down from number 8 to number 19, the resolution on the Palestine question. This is the Security Council. And then you go on to number 20. It was the Arab-Israeli War then. That was in 1950, November 17, 1950. Then the Palestine question goes all the way down to 32. And so on and so forth. But this is what the United Nations Security Council was doing. So, and then it goes all the way down to 187. The last one that's reported here is that Resolution 2334 on December 23rd, 2006 called for an end to Israel settlement building. Now let me click over here to where it says Israel and the United Nations. Let me click over here right quick. Israel relating to the state of Israel as well. So all day, what I'm looking at is the same thing, but and so like I said, this is what the United Nations did. Resolution 181. Now, the United Nations General Assembly on 15 May 1947 created the Special Committee on Palestine in response to a United Kingdom government request that the General Assembly make a recommendation under Article 10 of the Charter concerning the future government of Palestine. The UNSCOP was to prepare for consideration at the next regular session of the Assembly a report on the question of Palestine. UNSCOP consists of representatives of the 11 members: Australia, Canada, Czechoslovakia, Guatemala, India, Iran, Netherlands, Peru, Sweden, Uruguay, and Yugoslavia. In the final report of 3rd September 1947, 7 members of the committee in Chapter 6 expressed themselves by recorded vote in favor of the plan of partition with economic union. Reproduced in the report, the plan proposed an independent Arab state, an independent Jewish state in the city of Jerusalem. The Palestinian Arabs and members of the Arab League have rejected any partition of Palestine. Then on 29 November 1947, the General Assembly passed Resolution 181, commonly known as the United Nations Petition Plan for Palestine, which recommended the adoption and implementation of a slightly modified version of the UNSCOP Majority Petition Plan by 33 votes in favor, 13 against, and 10 abstentions, achieving the required 2/3 majority. The resolution was rejected by the Palestinian Arabs, and all members of the Arab League voted against. And so then they had a United Nations mediator in Palestine. Now, what I was reading is when Israel became a member of the United Nations. See, first it had to be a nation first, because it wasn't even a nation in 1947. But then once they became a nation, the two-state nation, Israel applied to be a member of the United Nations, and then Israel became a member of the United Nations in 1949. On 11 May 1949, they became a member of the United Nations. Now I'm gonna click back over. So when it came down to the 1980s, the Palestine National Council adopted in Algiers in 1988 the Declaration of Independence of the State of Palestine. The United Nations has not officially recognized this state, but by renaming the PLO Observer as the Palestine Observer, can be seen as having done so unofficially. In July 19 1998, the General Assembly adopted Resolution 52250 conferring upon Palestine additional rights and privileges, including the right to participate in the general debate held at the start of each session of the General Assembly, the right of reply, the right to co-sponsor resolutions, and the right to raise points of order on Palestinian and Middle East issues. Now I'm reading over here on when it said I'm still over here on the Palestine and United Nations. Now from 2015 to 2020 in recognition. By September 2012, with their application for full membership stalled due to the inability of Security Council members to make a unanimous recommendation, the Palestine Authority had decided to pursue an upgrade in status from observer entity to non-member observer state. On November 27th, it was announced that the appeal had been officially made and would be put to a vote in the General Assembly on 29 November, where their status upgrade was expected to be supported by a majority of states. In addition to granting Palestine non-member observer states that the draft resolution expresses the hope that the Security Council will consider favorably the application submitted on 23 September 2011 by the state of Palestine for admission to full membership in the United Nations, endorses the two-state solution based on the pre-1967 borders, and stresses the need for an immediate resumption of negotiations between the two parties. On Thursday, 29 November 2012, in a 138-9 vote with 41 abstaining, the General Assembly Resolution 6719 adopted upgrading Palestine to non-member observer state status in the United Nations. The new status equates Palestine with that okay, where was it? The new status equates Palestine with that of the Holy See. The change in status was described by the Independent as de facto recognition of the sovereign state of Palestine. The vote was an important move for the state of Palestine, whilst it was a diplomatic setback for Israel and the United States. Status as an observer state in the United Nations will allow the state of Palestine to join treaties and specialized United Nations agencies such as the International Civil Aviation Organization, the Law of the Seas Treaty, and the International Criminal Court. It shall permit Palestine to claim legal rights over its territorial waters and airspace as a sovereign state recognized by the United Nations. It shall also provide Palestine with the right to sue for control of disputed territory in the International Court of Justice and bring war crimes charges, mainly those relating to Israel's occupation of the state of Palestine, against Israel in the International Criminal Court. The United Nations has permitted Palestine to title its representative office to the United Nations as the permanent observer mission of the state of Palestine to the United Nations. And Palestine has started to retitle its name accordingly on postal stamps, official documents, and passports, whilst it has instructed its diplomats to officially represent the state of Palestine as opposed to the Palestine National Authority. Additionally, on 17 December 2012, United Nations Chief of Protocol Yoshio Yoon decided that the designation of the state of Palestine shall be used by the Secretary in all official United Nations documents. This recognized the PLO proclaimed state of Palestine as being sovereign over the territories of Palestine and its citizens under international law. As of 31 July 2019, 138, 71.5% of the 193 member states of the United Nations, in addition to the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, have recognized the state of Palestine as sovereign over both West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Many other countries that do not recognize the state of Palestine nevertheless recognize the PLO as the representative of the Palestine people. So like I said, when it comes to this issue, the United Nations is involved in Palestine and Israel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when it comes to Palestine being a member of the United Nations, again, the United Nations, it said non-member observer state since November 29, 2012. So Palestine is continuing to work toward being a full member of the United Nations. But they do have non-member observer state status. So it's not like the United Nations is ignoring the Palestinian people. It's not like the United Nations is ignoring this whole thing about the Jewish state. Sometimes you watch the news and the way it's presented on the news is like we totally in the dark about. But see, there again, the United Nations, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is working on this Israel-Palestine issue. And it affects everybody. It concerns everybody. And when it comes to terrorism, they said something about that too. I just didn't say nothing about it. But if anybody want to read it, you can refer to Wikipedia. Let me scroll down. The definition of terrorism. Here we go. Terrorism. The difficulty within the United Nations to find a unanimous definition of the word terrorism stems in part from the inability to reach consensus over whether Palestinian political violence is a form of resistance or terrorism. The OIC countries argue that Palestinians are fighting the foreign occupation from the U, which is the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. The question of a definition of terrorism has haunted the debate among states for decades. The United Nations member states still has no agreed upon definition. The lack of agreement on a definition of terrorism has been a major obstacle to meaningful international countermeasures. Cynics have often commented that one state's terrorist is another state's freedom fighter. Acts of Palestinian political violence have been repeatedly condemned in press releases from the Security Council. The text of General Assembly resolution does not distinguish terrorism from military operations. For example, in Resolution 6125, titled Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine, condemning all acts of violence and terror against civilians on both sides, including the suicide bombings, the extrajudicial executions, and the excessive use of force. See what I'm talking about? Several resolutions recognize the right of Palestinians to fight the Israeli occupation by all available means. For example, the 2002 UNCHR resolution E/CN 4/2002 16 states, recalling particularly General Assembly Resolution 3743 of 3 December 1982, reaffirming the legitimacy of the struggle of peoples against foreign occupation by all available means, including armed struggle. 1. Affirms the legitimate right of the Palestinian people to resist the Israeli occupation by all available means to free its land and be able to exercise its right of self-determination, and that by so doing, the Palestinian people is fulfilling its mission, one of the goals and purposes of the United Nations. Western countries who voted against the 2002 resolution claim this language condones Palestinian terrorism. Let me see, what was it? Miss Gervais from Canada. Number 3, the failure of the draft resolution to condemn all acts of terrorism, particularly in the context of recent suicide bombs targeting civilians, was a serious oversight that rendered it fundamentally unacceptable. There could be no justification for terrorist acts. Ms. Glover, United Kingdom, 16. Although her delegation agreed with many other concerns expressed in the draft resolution, the text contained language which might be interpreted as endorsing violence and condoning terrorism. The resolution was nevertheless passed in its entirety. So there again, So at the United Nations, see, people be saying things and all this, but like I say, I support the United Nations 100%. See, people not doing things without having other people being able. See, when you talk, it's just like when you watch the news and you see people out protesting, and then they be on the news media. They trying to broadcast all this, so people like me sitting at home watching the news, you expect me to go out on the street just like them and be out on the street condemning Israel. I'm not finna do that. I'm not finna condemn Israel. I support human rights 100%. I support the fact that all human beings have a right to live, including the Jewish people. They got the right to live just like everybody else. Shit, hell, if you want to talk about all this right and wrong and all that, people all over the world be accusing each other all the time. Every member of the United Nations got all this stuff in the past. Whether it be stuff, internal stuff, domestic or foreign. Every member of the United Nations, including Palestine, gonna have some stuff come up. Domestic and foreign. Got all kind of issues. Stuff that we talking about domestic. When you talk about domestic, that means just like a dictator. Accusing people in your own people of trying to trying to violate the rights of your own people. It'll come up. They'll bring it up. You talking about Yasser Arafat and the PLO. And I guarantee you there'll be some people that'll bring up some stuff about the PLO and what they done to the Palestinian people. It'll come up. It'll be all kind of stuff come up. And on the other side, it'll be the same thing. You'll hear all this stuff about the Israeli people. Arguing with everybody about Judaism and all this about rights, human rights and all this. And I guarantee you there'll be all kind of stuff that'll come up about what Israeli people do to other Israeli people. It'll come up. Now let me go back to the League of Nations. Now the League of Nations was the first worldwide intergovernmental organization whose principal mission was to maintain world peace. It was founded on 10 January 1920 by the Paris Peace Conference. They ended the First World War. The main organization ceased operation on 20 April 1946, when many of its components were relocated into the new United Nations. As the template for modern global governance, the League profoundly shaped the modern world. The League's primary goals were stated in its covenant. They included preventing wars through collective security and disarmament, and settling international disputes through negotiation and arbitration. Its other concerns include labor conditions, just treatment of native inhabitants, human and drug trafficking, the arms trade, global health, prisoners of war, and protection of minorities in Europe. The Covenant of the League of Nations was signed on 28 June 1919 as part 1 of the Treaty of Versailles, and it became effective with the rest of the treaty on 10 January 1920. Australia was granted the right to participate as an autonomous member nation, marking the start of Australian independence on the global stage. The first meeting of the Council of the League took place on 16 January 1920, and the first meeting of the Assembly of the League took place on 15 November 1920. In 1919, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson won the Nobel Peace Prize for his role as the leading architect of the League. The diplomatic philosophy behind the League represented a fundamental shift from the preceding 100 years. The League lacked its own armed force and depended on the victorious allies of World War I. Britain, France, Italy, and Japan were the initial permanent members of the Executive Council to enforce its resolution, keep to its economic sanctions, or provide an army when needed. The great powers were often reluctant to do so. Sanctions could hurt League members, so they were reluctant to comply with them. During the Second Italo-Ethiopian War, when the League accused Italian soldiers of targeting international Red Cross and Red Crescent movement medical tents, Benito Mussolini responded that the League is very well when sparrows shout, but no good at all when eagles fall out. At its great extent, from 28 September 1934 to 23 February 1935, it had 58 members. After some notable success and some early failures in the 1920s, the League ultimately proved incapable of preventing aggression by the Axis powers. In the 1930s, the credibility of the organization was weakened by the fact that the United States never joined, and Japan, Germany, and Italy quit in 1933 and 1934. The Soviet Union only joined in 1934 and was expelled in 1939 after invading Finland. Furthermore, the League demonstrated an irresolute approach to sanction enforcement for fear it might only spark further conflict, further decreasing its credibility. One example of its hesitance was the Abyssinian crisis, in which Italy's sanctions were only limited from the outset. Coal and oil were not restricted, and later altogether abandoned. Despite Italy being declared the aggressors in the conflict, the onset of the Second World War in 1939 showed that the League had failed its primary purpose. It was largely inactive until its abolition. The League lasted for 26 years. The United Nations replaced it in 1946 and inherited several agencies and organizations founded by the League. Current scholarly consensus views that even though the League failed to achieve its main goal of world peace, it did manage to build new roads towards expanding the rule of law across the globe, strengthen the concept of collective security, giving a voice to smaller nations, foster economic stabilization and financial stability, especially in Central Europe. In the 1920s, helped to raise awareness of problems like epidemics, slavery, child labor, colonial tyranny, refugee crisis, and general working toward conditions through its numerous commissions and committees, and paved the way for new forms of statehood as the mandate system put the colonial powers under international observation. Professor David Kennedy portrays the League as a unique moment when international affairs were institutionalized as opposed to the pre-First World War methods of law and politics. So like I said, that was the League of Nations, which was a good idea. You know, it was a little, like I said, it was a little weak in some spurts, but the concept itself was a good idea. When it comes to the United Nations Charter, it's the foundational treaty of the United Nations and intergovernmental organization that establishes the purpose, governance structure, and overall framework of the United Nations system, including its 6 principal organs: the Secretary, the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the International Court of Justice, and the Trusteeship Council. The United Nations Charter mandates the United Nations as its member states to maintain international peace and security, uphold international law, achieve high standards of living for their citizens, address economic, social, health, and related problems, and promote universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms for all without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion. As a charter and constituent treaty, its rules and obligations are binding on all members and supersede those of other treaties. During the Second World War, the Allies, formerly known as the United Nations, agreed to establish a new post-war international organization. Pursuant to this goal, the United Nations Charter was discussed, prepared, and drafted during the San Francisco Conference that began 25 April 1945, which involved most of the world's sovereign nations. Following 2/3 approval of each part, the final text was unanimously adopted by delegates and open for signature on 25 June 1945. It was signed in San Francisco, United States, by 50 of the 51 original member countries. The charter entered into force on 24 October 1945, following ratification by the 5 permanent members of the United States, other than the United Nations Security Council: China, France, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States, and a majority of the other signatories. This is considered the official starting date of the United Nations, with the first session of the General Assembly representing all 51 initial members opening in London the following January. The General Assembly formally recognized 24 October as United Nations Day in 1947 and declared it an official international holiday in 1971. With 193 parties, most countries have now ratified the Charter. The Charter consists of a preamble and 111 articles grouped into 19 chapters. The preamble consists of 2 principal parts. The first part contains a general call for the maintenance of peace and international security and respect for human rights. The second part of the preamble is a declaration in contractual style that the governments of the peoples of the United Nations have agreed to the Charter, and it is the first international document regarding human rights. So, like I said, I recommend that people in your own time read the United Nations Charter. And so, like the preamble and everything. And the purpose and the principles. Like in Article number 1, in the purpose of the United Nations, number 3, to achieve international cooperation and solving international problems of the economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian character, and in promoting and encouraging respect for human rights and for fundamental freedoms for all without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion, and to be a center for harmonizing the action of nations in the attainment of these common ends. So, like I said, I recommend that anyone know that you pay attention to the United Nations Charter, and always remember that it started with the League of Nations, which was a good idea, and it was a lot of things that the League of Nations had instituted. That it was the foundation for the United Nations. A lot of things they took from the League of Nations and included in the United Nations. And so, when it comes to this whole issue about Palestine and Israel, that's the reason why I took the time to go over what the United Nations have been saying about Israel and Palestine, that it's a two-state solution. They made this solution in 1947. It'll be a Arab state and it'll be a Israeli state. The two-state solution, and irregardless of all the difficulties along the way, it's always been the United Nations that's been guiding the whole world on this issue. You see what I'm talking about? It's been the United Nations, so that's the reason why I continue to encourage people to just continue to work toward peace, because that's really what the United Nations has been doing, working toward peace. And when you see people protesting, it's not like the United Nations don't have all these issues. You know what I'm saying? All these issues about whose land it is. Here it is, 2023. The United Nations is fully aware about who the people are that live all over the world. They just say all over the world. All this stuff about colonialism, all this stuff about the British mandate from the League of Nations, all that. It ain't nothing that the United Nations not aware of, you know. And on the same token, it's the same thing for with the United Nations, with the State of Israel. The State of Israel is a full member of the United Nations. They are a full member of the United Nations. So these issues are not being swept under the rug. It's nothing that being, there's nothing about Palestine or about the Middle East that the United Nations is not aware of. We know the United Nations is fully aware of all the historical issues about the Middle East. So people being out on the street protesting, as I just read in the Charter of the United Nations, that's a fundamental right, fundamental freedom. You understand? To protest. And you can't infringe upon that right, because it's a right that that the United Nations say they want everybody to have, fundamental freedoms. People have their right. And I'm not finna argue with the United Nations about no fundamental freedom. If you want to protest, you can protest about whatever you want to protest about. That's a fundamental freedom. It's protected in the United Nations. You can't interfere with that. You can't infringe on that. Nobody can infringe upon anyone else's fundamental freedom. Each individual has the fundamental freedom that's protected by the United Nations. Freedom of the press is protected by the United Nations. It's a fundamental freedom. Freedom of speech. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to labor disputes, it's a fundamental freedom. When it comes to war, everybody that's involved in the war, you got to abide by international law. You can't kill civilians. You can't kill prisoners of war. If somebody get taken prisoner, you can't kill the prisoner. You can't not feed the prisoners. You can't torture. There's a law, the international law, protect everybody. And even in a war, they recommend that everybody involved in the war still try to talk to each other and try to come to an agreement that, hey, we're gonna end this war. And so when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian situation right now, just like I read this thing about terrorism, the United Nations really haven't given a clear definition of terrorism, but still, you can't justify killing men, women, and children. That's still in international law. You can't do it. You can claim whatever you want. You can claim you're trying to resist. You cannot kill men, women, and children, because it's going to cause an uproar. The only thing it's going to lead to is war. You can claim whatever you want to claim. Violence, like Dr. Martin Luther King said, violence only leads to violence, man. No matter what you claim, you can make up whatever reason or excuse. Violence is going to lead to violence. It ain't no justification for that. It ain't no justification for you to be committing all these atrocities. You can't justify that. You can't justify. No, you can't justify that, man. Because, again, every human being has fundamental rights, fundamental freedoms. Every human being has fundamental freedom. You can't make up no doctrine or no ideology and claim that you're going to go around and kill men, women, and children. You can't do that. You can't do that. It's just not, it's nothing that, it's nothing that you can say they can justify killing men, women, and children. Because you got an international criminal court, like we just been going over all these issues. You can't do that. The prosecuting attorney gonna be sitting there. You can't do that. The International Criminal Court, you cannot kill no men, women, and children. You can't do that. Only thing it's gonna lead to is war. If the two sides are already at war, and then you just, you know what I'm saying, you commit some kind of atrocity while you at war, only thing what make you think the war is gonna continue. The war not gonna stop. It's just gonna be another reason for the war to continue. But see, it's a good thing that the United States is trying to advise Israel through this and not leave Israel just by themselves. Because Israel is not by themselves. The whole world is aware of this circumstance, of these situations. You know, the whole world, this is what the United Nations for. The whole world is aware of these situations. I just read the preamble to the United Nations Charter. Israel is a full member of the United Nations. So Israel is holding to, by Israel being a member of the United Nations, they are holding to all these principles of the Charter of the United Nations. They being held to this standard because they are full member. Palestine is lobbying to become a full member. They are an observer. See, when you trying to get somewhere, you can't get nowhere trying to, kill men, women, and children. You ain't gonna never get nowhere. Only thing that's gonna do is push you back. Only thing they're gonna do is push you back. See, in order for you to become a full member, you have to respect the people that's living in Israel. You can't kill men, women, and children. You can't do that. And then think you're gonna become a member of the United Nations. You can't do that. It ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen. You can't do it. It's something that you just can't do. Because the only thing it's going to do is, the only thing it's going to lead to is, see, Israel is a full member of the United Nations. And in the charter, now, the purpose of the United Nations to maintain international peace and security, to take effective collective measures for the prevention and removal of threats to the peace and for the suppression of acts of aggression or other breaches of the peace, and to bring about by peaceful means and in conformity with the principle of justice and international law, adjustments or settlement of international disputes or a situation which might lead to a breach of the peace. That's number one. Number two, to develop friendly relations among nations based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, and to take other appropriate measures to strengthen universal peace. That's number two. Number three, to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian character, and promoting and encouraging respect for human rights, and for fundamental freedoms for all, without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion. Israel is a full member of the United Nations. So they are being held to this standard. And number four, to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations in the attainment of these common ends. That's article number one. Now, let me read number 2, article number 2. Because Israel is a full member of the United Nations. Let me read number 2. The organization and its members, in pursuit of the purposes stated in article number 1, shall act in accordance with the following principles. Number 1, the organization is based on the principle of the sovereign equality of all its members. Number 2, all members, in order to ensure to all of them the rights and benefits resulting from membership, shall fulfill in good faith the obligations assumed by them in accordance with the present charter. Number 3, all members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means, in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered. Number 4, all members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. Number 5, all members shall give the United Nations every assistance in any action it takes in accordance with the present charter, and shall refrain from giving assistance to any state against which the United Nations is taking preventive or enforcement action. Number 6, the organization shall ensure that states which are not members of the United Nations act in accordance with these principles so far as may be necessary for the maintenance of international peace and security. Number 7, nothing contained in the present charter shall authorize the United Nations to intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state, or shall require the members to submit such matters to settlement under the present charter, but this principle shall not prejudice the application of enforcement measures under under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter. Israel is a member of the United Nations. Palestine is not a full member, but they are recognized by the United Nations. And Israel is a member. So Israel is recognizing Palestine as an observer status until they become full member of the United Nations. Palestine is recognized by the United Nations. So all the issues, all this about occupied land, all this about whose land it is, all this about Islam, Christianity, all this about Judaism, all this about religion. It ain't nothing that the United Nations is not aware of. All the fundamental freedoms are being considered and being protected by the United Nations. You want to protest? You have the right to protest. If you don't want to protest, you can do that too. I'm not out in the street protest. That's my right. That's a fundamental freedom. I don't want to go on a street protest. Now, we live in a day and time, we have social media, we have the World Wide Web or the internet. You got that right. That's a fundamental freedom. It's protected. It's protected. Freedom of the press. You want to be on television? Well, out in all these different places you want to be on television? You can go out in the street and protest. I'm quite certain the cameraman put the camera on you. You want to protest? Go ahead. That's your fundamental freedom. I'm not finna argue with nobody. I just read it. It's a fundamental freedom. I'm not finna argue with nobody. Nowhere on this earth, nowhere on this planet about no fundamental freedom, because it's protected by the United Nations. If anything, I'm encouraging. You want to protest? Go ahead. Hell, I ain't finna argue with you. You want to go protest? Protest. If you don't, that's fine too. Hell, this is the United Nations. That's the point I've been making about Palestine and Israel. That the United Nations always should be involved. That's my point. Is that the whole thing has been it started with the League of Nations was involved because the British mandate. Now it's the United Nations. That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. All nations around the world are continuing to encourage and work toward peace for Palestine and Israel. That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Just like this current situation. Ain't neither side being left by themselves. Both sides in this issue. The United Nations. Even the United States. Our ambassador to the United Nations. They continue to work about this issue. And then we got our Secretary of State Conley continuing to negotiate with all parties involved. With everybody around the world about this issue and trying to work toward peace. You know, and when I seen, it's being reported on the news that now you have Israeli ground forces, not just the Air Force, but now you got the Israeli Defense Force. The ground forces are moving. They have Gaza City surrounded. It's also being reported that a lot of people, that Hamas at the crossing wasn't letting people go. They wasn't letting anybody go through the crossing, to get out of Gaza. They wasn't letting. Now they letting people go. They let some people go. They've been allowed to leave Gaza. They've been allowed to leave. And the whole situation up there in Lebanon with Hezbollah. They continue firing firing rockets or whatever, firing across the border, shooting across the border, and the Israelis shooting back. The Iranians are trying to continue to give support to Hezbollah and Hamas, but Hamas, you just ain't gonna be able to hide. You ain't gonna be able to hide in a crowd. People getting hurt. Collateral damage. It ain't nothing that Israel is intentionally doing, but it's what Hamas is doing. They intentionally trying to hide amongst the civilian population. The civilian population, now the Israeli ground forces coming from the north, so allowing the Palestinian people to leave. They want to leave all this war. They want to leave. So they being allowed to leave because the Israeli Defense Force. They trying to make a humanitarian corridor so the people can leave, so the Palestinian people can get out of there, can get out of the way, man. They don't want to get hurt. They don't want to be involved in this war. They don't want to support Hamas. They trying to get out of there. Hamas, the people that's calling themselves Hamas, they dying every day. They dying. A whole lot of them. The Israeli Defense Force killing them. The ones that's not being, captured or whatever, they being killed. They fighting in a war that they ain't gonna win. They ain't gonna win. Now they depending on international pressure to try to get a ceasefire. It ain't gonna happen. The United States President Biden already told you, it's not gonna be no ceasefire. You can forget it. It's not even a consideration. It ain't no ceasefire. The Israeli Defense Force doing what's right. They have the right to defend themselves. The only thing the United States government is making clear is what everybody's saying is abide by international law and try to make humanitarian aid and stuff can get in to the civilians. Civilians are not in this war. It's not a bad thing to say. It's a good thing to say. You see? It's the right thing to do. Support Israel. Guide them through this. Don't leave them by themselves. Guide them through it. It ain't nothing we ain't been through. And we still fighting the war on terrorism. Because I guarantee you what's going to happen, what I see coming, is this Hezbollah in Lebanon. I see it coming. Oh, I see it coming. See, Hamas has been weakened with the Israeli Defense Force. Hamas is, they catching hell. They catching hell. They whining and crying about the airstrikes. They were whining and crying about the airstrikes. That's because the civilian was there. They were trying to use the civilian to hide. Now the Israeli ground forces are in there. I'm glad. Because now they got Gaza City surrounded. Gaza City surrounded. I'm glad. They can get in there and get into a fight. And the more fighting they do, the more experienced they are in their territory. See, they know this territory like the back of their hand. I'm glad the ground forces are getting in there and fighting against Hamas. They being weakened. Because you ain't too anxious to get into a fight. And see, that's what it means. You get in there and let the Israeli Defense Force go in there and get in the fight. Let them fight. Hamas want to fight, goddamn it, let them fight. Maybe you'll get somewhere and sit down. Because the Palestine Liberation Organization was already in power. They had already got Palestine to where they are today. It's because of Yasser Arafat and the Palestine Liberation Organization. There wasn't no need for no Hamas. But you know where that came from? See, when you talk about the PLO and Hamas, one thing don't never forget about all that Sunni Muslim and Shiite Muslim. Because see, when you see Hezbollah, they Shiite Muslim. Over there in Iran, them Shiite Muslims in Iran, that's who Hamas is. They call it, they Shiites. See, the PLO and Yasser Arafat, they wasn't no Shiites. They were Sunni. You ever notice that the Saudi Arabians didn't really want to say anything about Hamas? It's the reason why. Because when they see Hamas, they see Shiites. You see how Iran, that's who's supporting Hamas, is Iran. The Shiites. That's who's supporting Hezbollah. Iran. Not Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia does not support Hezbollah. Because why? Saudi Arabia are Sunni. They'll kill them. They'll fight. Like they're doing down in Yemen. See, that's what they don't talk about. Is the reason why you got a war in Yemen is because Saudi Arabia supporting one side and the Iranians are supporting the other side in the war in Yemen. So don't forget that. Don't forget. When you see Hamas, they're Shiites, not the PLO. Because the PLO, they were Sunni. Yasser Arafat. And all the people that were the Palestine Liberation Organization. Excuse me. Excuse me. So don't forget, when you think about this so-called war, in Palestine and between Israel and Palestine, see, Iran is not Sunni. They are Shiites. That's what happened in Iraq. That's what happened in Syria. That's the reason why in Syria right now, when the Syrian war broke out, it was a civil war in Syria. What do that mean in Syria? That's what it was. It was some people in Syria who were Sunni. And there were some people in Syria who were Shiites. And they got into a war with each other. And Syria is still divided today. Iraq, when the Iraq war started, when Iraq had went to war with Iran, when Saddam Hussein was in power, Saddam Hussein was not a Shiite. He was a Sunni. He was fighting against Iran. Don't forget. You see it. They'll get to fighting with each other. The Muslims will get to fighting with each other. Just like when Saddam Hussein was in power in Iraq. He went to war against them Shiite Muslims over in Iran. He didn't give a damn about them. And they didn't give a damn about him. That's the same thing happened over in Afghanistan. When Iran, you see the Taliban? Who's supporting them? Iran. So don't be confused about this war in Israel, about some land, because to the Muslims over in Saudi Arabia, they sitting there looking. They try to have peace with the Israelis, even in Egypt too. Egypt tried to have peace with the Israelis. This is what the Sunni Muslims tried to do. They tried to have peace with Israel. That's what the PLO did. That's what Yasser Arafat did. They had peace with Israel. But what did Hamas do? It's what's going on right now is because of Iran. That's the reason why Hezbollah keep firing shooting across the border. Because Iran. That's what they call a proxy. That's what Hezbollah being labeled as. An Iranian proxy. And that's the same thing about Hamas. Hamas had overthrown the government in Palestine. They overthrew the government in what, 2008? 2007, 2008, something like that. They overthrew the government. This is what Iran is doing. Don't forget. Like I tell you, hey, you want to protest out on the street? The people that want to be on the street and you want to protest about the occupied land, don't forget. Don't forget. All this stuff about the Sunni Muslim and the Shiite Muslim, because they will get to fighting. Don't be surprised when you see some people in Palestine fighting each other. Because the Sunnis, they're not going to. Over there in Egypt, why do you think Egypt was hesitating about letting people come across the border? Because the majority of people in Egypt are Sunni. And over in Saudi Arabia, on the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, the people that surrounding them like Qatar, Oman, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain. What's the one? I think that was Bahrain. This Saddam Hussein that took, and that started the whole Iran. It was Bahrain, wasn't it? Yeah, something like that. You know what I'm talking about. On the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, right next door to Iraq, and Saddam Hussein called himself going to try to take it. That was a big mistake for him. What time is it? Oh, okay. But hey, this is important that we had this talk. Hey, the United Nations, fundamental freedoms. You got the right to protest. You got the right to say what, you know what I'm saying, it's freedom of speech. We all got that right. All over the world. And we thank the United Nations for, you know what I'm saying, for making sure we had these rights. The only thing I want to make sure is this. Don't be confused. See, sometimes the news media don't always, you know what I'm saying, they don't always get to the root of all this. But don't forget, when they be saying about Hamas and that Iran is supporting Hamas, the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, they were not Shiites. Yasser Arafat was not a Shiite. He was a Sunni. Him and all those who were part of the PLO. And that's the reason why they tried to have a peace when, what's his name, Menachem Begin in Egypt signed a peace accord at Camp David when Jimmy Carter was president. And even after that, the Israelis were trying to, and the Palestinians was trying to have peace with Israel. It was the PLO, the Sunni Muslims. This true. And anybody that they'll tell you the same thing. That the PLO were not Shiites. They were Sunni Muslims. And they tried to have, that's the reason why Jordan, the Jordanian government, they not Shiites. They Sunni Muslims. They right next door. Saudi Arabia, that reason why, like I said, that reason why you ain't been hearing nothing about Saudi Arabia. Because they know Hamas being supported by Iran. Iran is Shiite. They'll get to fighting. They already fighting over in Syria. Sometimes over in Iraq, probably against, having some problems between the Shiites and the Sunnis. Up there in Lebanon, it's predominantly Shiite. That's the reason why it's an Iranian proxy. That's what those Shiites, Hezbollah, is Shiite Muslim. Saudi Arabia not trying to help Hezbollah do nothing. It's not, that's the reason why the Israelis ain't saying nothing to Saudi Arabia. That's the reason why you don't hear the Israelis saying nothing about Saudi Arabia. You know who they talking about? Iran. They talking about attacking Iran. That's the reason why. Because the Saudi Arabia not trying to have war with Israel. Egypt not either. Jordan not either. Only thing they wanted to do is just make sure that the Palestinians had a right. Now it's a state. That's pretty much all they wanted to make sure. And just make sure that the Palestinians have, their rights are protected. That's it. Palestine finna go, but with all this Hamas stuff, talking about killing men, women, and children, you ain't gonna never be no state. You ain't gonna never be no state. Never. You can't do that. But see, that's not what the PLO did. That's the reason why the PLO got Palestine to where they are now with the United Nations. Because the PLO was being guided by the United Nations to statehood. And PLO listened. They listened to the United Nations step by step. When you see all them resolutions, it was that the Palestinians were not being aggressive. And when you don't be aggressive, when you listen to what the United Nations telling you, you become a member of the United Nations. The reason why the United Nations recognize Palestine as an observer, that is because of what the PLO did. But now you got Hamas in power. Look what's happening now. It ain't really nothing the United Nations can say. They can't infringe upon Israel's right to defend itself. Israel is a full member of the United Nations. So what did the United States do? The United States stepped in and tried to guide Israel. Look, allow these humanitarian, trucks to come in. Israel wasn't doing anything to the civilians in the first damn place. It's what Hamas did to their own people. Because see, when you do something like that, you already know Israel going to retaliate. So behind this, do anybody think that Israel not going to respond if they do something again? Behind this? No, you ought to know. If you plan anything, if Hamas have any more plans, if they have any more plans to kill men, women, and children in Israel, damn it, you already know. You already know from the last time, from 2003, that October 7th mess you tried. You see over 10,000 civilians already been killed in the war. Palestinians have already died. So I don't see how you gonna make another plan again and not know that Israel gonna attack. I don't see how nobody around the world, all this damn protesting that everybody doing, I don't see how nobody around the world don't see. If you do that again, if you try that dumb mess again, they know what's gonna happen. Israel gonna attack. They gonna attack you. And they got the right to attack. They got the right. Hell, they're a full member of the United Nations. They know the charter. See? Iran. See, they behind this. You should see, the people should see that Saudi Arabia was not behind this. The Sunni Muslims, they have nothing to do with it. It should be obvious that Hamas and Hezbollah are Shiite Muslims. That's who did it. That's who, you don't hear Saudi Arabia saying nothing. But you see who been doing all the talking. The Iranians. And then you got some guy over there in Lebanon, I think the so-called leader of Hezbollah, running his mouth. I tell you one thing, you better not underestimate the United States military. I know that. You can say whatever you want. And over there in Iran, the same, you can say whatever you want. You better not underestimate the United States military, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, and our Guard service. I'm telling you, we done showed you. It don't go like that, man. It don't go like that. No. You don't don't underestimate the United States military. Because I'm telling you what's going to happen. What happened the last time. When the United States go, every time the United States move, the United Kingdom move. Every time the United States move militarily, you know who else gonna move? The United Kingdom. It always happens. And when the United Kingdom move, France be sitting there. They might hesitate sometimes. They might, because they with you already. But they might, they might not. But just as soon as stuff get kicked off, all the rest of them gonna fall. But the United Kingdom, soon as the United States get into any kind of conflict, you can guarantee the United Kingdom gonna be right there. Gonna be right smack dab in the middle. So I'm telling you, if the Iranians want to fight, goddamn, you gonna get one. You gonna get one. It ain't gonna go like you think. It's gonna be the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and the Guard service. And then when they move, when the United States move, the United Kingdom coming. Always. Every time the United States go to war, The United Kingdom be right there with you. Always. Every time. You can go every war. After World War II ended. In every conflict that the United States been in. Who else been in? The United Kingdom. They've been right there. And then right along with that, the French. And then you got all these other North Atlantic Treaty Organization nations that get involved. See, when one go, all gonna go. And then now this day and time, now you got all these other countries that got a treaty with the United States. Some of them countries in Africa today are allies with the United States. Hell, they'll get involved. Talking about some terrorism. They done it before. Sometimes you ain't even think about it. Because I know a lot of African countries are smaller than the United States. But what you didn't see is that they was involved. Just like in the war against terrorism. So, at the United Nations and all that. But militarily, sometimes the African nations, they was involved. Militarily. Some of their men and women, some of their military was involved. Without you even it may not even get reported because some, like I said, some nations small. Ghana or Senegal or Ivory Coast, Kenya, Tanzania, man, be nations on the continent of Africa. They are allies with the United States today. Today, are allies, not, are actually allies. They got a treaty with the United States. The United States has been sending military advisors to help train the personnel, train them in military. Yeah. And so what make you think they wouldn't send some of their men and women, some of their military to fight in a war? They will. And they have done it. So Iran can say whatever they want. You can say whatever you want. But don't take the United States military for granted, man. Don't underestimate the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, and our Guard service. Don't underestimate us, man. Because it ain't going to be like you think. And trying to use the media, the television, for sympathy. It ain't going to happen like that. Because here in America, these people know you don't go out on the street like that. Because we don't get involved in no fight if we ain't right. When we get involved in a fight, goddamn, we going to be right. And these people here in America, they're going to stand with our Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, and Guard service. And when they hit the street, they're going to be protesting for America, not against America. You see some people in America protest, goddamn, they're going to be protesting for America. Because they got somebody in their family that's serving in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, and the Guard service. And they ain't going to want to hear it. They ain't going to want to hear it. So you can say whatever you want to say. Don't underestimate America. Look, yeah, this is about time me to go ahead and end. But we got to stand. We got to stand for what's right. You can't, we can't support terrorism. That's the point I make. This whole situation in Israel and Palestine right now, it's about terrorism. But what they try to do, they try to take it and make it like it's about occupied. No, it's not. No, it's not. See, that's what the United Nations is there for. So all these issues are not swept under the rug. So it can't be about occupied land now. See, what you are, a bunch of criminals trying to oppress your own people. That's the only thing you're doing, oppressing your own people. And you try to use Israel as a disguise to hide the crimes you commit against your own people. Because that's the only thing you're doing is committing crimes against your own people. And so I'm going to get ready to end today's video. But like I said, this war is not about no occupied land. It couldn't be. It ain't. It's not. All this is a bunch of criminals who wanted to recruit. Who was trying to recruit. They used violence to recruit. They Shiites. Hamas are Shiites, just like Hezbollah. They Shiite. They not Sunni. Only thing they were trying to do is trying to use violence to try to recruit. And now they get into a fight with the Israelis, and they not winning. So now they trying to depend on the news media to feel sorry for them. The Israeli Defense Force doing a damn good job. They doing a damn good job. They deserve we should support them. Because it was wrong what them cowards did. It was wrong. And then we don't never forget about the hostages. They're still being held. You see what I'm talking about? They sitting up here holding people hostage for no reason. There ain't no reason for you to hold no man, woman, child hostage. Just like it wasn't no reason for you to kill no man, woman, and children. Man, I want to end today's video. Man, I saw something on CNN yesterday. I wasn't even looking for it. Sometimes I leave the TV on. Just like Fox, sometimes just like with all this warning, sometimes I leave the TV on. I be walking around the house and stuff. And I just happened to see something yesterday that really broke my heart. And I'm pretty sure a lot of other people in America, around the world, you probably seen it too on CNN. Because that's one of the things I would like to see. I want to hear about the victims, man. Because I really do want to feel sympathy for the victims. And when I seen what I saw yesterday, this lady and her husband still being held. Her husband being held hostage. And my heart goes out to the victims, man. It really do. I'm sincere. That really affected me. That really affected me. This lady, her family, they was at home with their family. And these cowards, they was coming through there. I think they had kidnapped one of this little boy and had this little boy going around knocking on the doors. And some of the people were really scared, but they didn't know who was outside. And so the terrorists was making this little boy tell these people to open the door. And this lady and her family, I think she had 4 children. I think the oldest child got killed. Was the daughter. She got killed. And I think another child got shot. And then her 2 smallest children, they was able to survive. But they recorded it. She recorded on the phone. She recorded it. And CNN showed it yesterday. My heart goes out to the family, man. That's wrong. That's wrong, man. See, you people be out on the streets and protest. You ought to see how wrong it is. What Hamas did is wrong. It ain't got nothing to do with no occupied territory. Them just criminals. Them just some damn criminals. Some coward ass criminals. That ain't right. That ain't right. That ain't got nothing to do with no occupied territory. You can say whatever you want to say. But you got the right to protest. Because that's a fundamental freedom. But I know damn well what them cowards did, them terrorists did, they ain't nothing but some cowards. Some damn criminals. And the Israeli Defense Force is right. You doing what's right. The Israeli president, Herzog, that's right, to defend your country. Prime Minister Netanyahu, he right to defend your nation. Because them some cowards. Them some cowards. They criminals. They criminals. That's not right. That ain't right. And see, that's what I don't like about the news, because you don't show the victims, man. You don't show enough of the victims. And I don't like it. Look, I'm gonna get ready to end today's video. And again, my name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine. Everybody in the city of Memphis, is in the county of Shelby, is in the state of Tennessee. And thank all my fans, my support for your continued encouragement, support, and continue to pray. I encourage each and every one, just continue to pray for peace, man. Continue to pray for peace. And thank God, that the United Nations all around the world is trying to work toward peace, because, as we know, the war in Ukraine and Russia. And if I'm not mistaken, there's still a war. I seen some on Friday. I was watching Voice of America, Africa 54, and they was reporting something about the war in Sudan, like northern Sudan, the Sudan. They were still saying there was a war still going on, and of course, in South Sudan, if I'm not mistaken, there's still fighting going on in South Sudan. And then you got this war in Eritrea and Ethiopia. You got the Congo, it's war. And and then in some of these other countries in West Africa, like Burkina Faso, there's been all kind of coups throwing over, the government's being overthrown in Mali, and it's a lot of things going on, and it's a lot of just a lot of wars, man. And then you got this war that happened in Armenia and Azerbaijan, and Afghanistan and Syria, still fighting. It's still a civil war. You might not hear about it all the time, and then Iraq is still having, and then of course now with all this stuff with Iran, our United States servicemen and women that are stationed there in Syria and in Iraq being fired upon. See, it's going to lead to, it don't have nothing to do with Israel. It was just, just a pawn. You know what I'm saying? It was just a pawn. And all it's going to lead to is a conflict. But like I said, you can underestimate the United States if you want. But you can pump, you can pump it, you can pump yourself up. You can get hyped up. You can hype yourself up if you want to. But you're going to wish you hadn't. The United States not going to sit there and be threatened. You're not going to threaten the United States. But, hey, if that's what you want, that's what you're going to get. But continue to pray. Just continue to pray for peace. Let us all pray for peace and be hopeful that all the hostages that are being held in Israel will be released. Continue to be hopeful, and and let's not be on the wrong side. Let's be on the right side of the issue. The Israelis, they are doing what's right, defend themselves, and our government, the United States government, is being right and guide Israel through this. Don't leave Israel by themselves or try to criticize and all this, and guide them through this. Guide them through it. Because the only thing you're dealing with is some criminals. They some cowards. They're some cowards. And when it comes to public opinion, we don't want people to be trying to talk down to the Israelis. They doing what's right. They defending themselves. And in the process of defending themselves, you got all these civilians, So, let's be on the right side. Let's be on the right side. Nobody's trying to look. The United States government ain't trying to take no land from the Palestinians. And all this stuff about some occupied land, the United Nations been aware of this since the League of Nations. This ain't nothing new about no occupied land. This ain't nothing new. This ain't nothing new. So I'm gonna end today's video. Until next time, you take care of yourself, and I wish each and every one of you the very best. I'm gonna just let one more minute run, cause then it'll be 3 hours and some minutes. Then I'm gonna go watch some football.